All right. So bright white slides. Sorry about that. I'm a dark mode fan, but we are going with a different scheme today. So today I'm going to talk with you about some best practices for accessibility. In some cases, these are going to be specific to certain applications within the suite of Adobe Creative Cloud. In other cases, these are going to be best practices that you can accomplish anywhere. I hope that you will interrupt me and ask questions. Get at least one or two ideas out of this that you can take forward, and have some questions in the back of your mind for the next time you create something. Okay, so I'm Rachel Thompson. I work in the Office of Information Technology. Barrett is one of my colleagues and has done a superb job putting this together today. I'm director of the Center for Instructional Technology. If you are on UA's campus, you've probably heard of something called Blackboard, or maybe something called Turnitin. Our office supports that. We also do our best to support technology accessibility at UA. Okay. So, some driving thoughts and questions that I hope that you will carry with you. Accessibility isn't just a checkbox. It's a mindset. It is a way, yes, there are guidelines that we are supposed to follow, but the guidelines only go so far. Thinking about accessibility is a shift in how you look at your content and look at the things you create in the hopes of making it so more people can access them. I'd like for you to think about what makes digital content inclusive and effective. When you make a certain design decision, are you excluding people? Are you making your resources less available, less effective for someone? And we're going to talk a little bit about accessibility tools, features, and workarounds in Adobe, and what small changes in design and structure can help all users. I have found a few examples and we'll talk through those. What actionable strategies can help ensure that everyone can engage fully? Don't worry, I'm not going to read every slide. So when we talk about accessibility at UA, we have an accessibility policy and it has been recently updated. I wonder if that's why some of you are here. Also, our policy has been updated in order to help us comply with Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which has a compliance date of April 24th of 2026, and that's not very far away. We have a new set of guidelines, a new set of requirements that all of our digital content needs to meet. And if you'd like more information about that, please just let me know. I will say that it includes lots of things. It includes the EPUBs you put on a website. It includes your social media posts. It includes the PDFs that you send out across your division. It includes the videos that you publish on a website. Lots of things. When we talk about content being accessible, POUR is an acronym, right, that we use. It comes from the W3C, World Wide Web Consortium, and it's a way for us to think about accessibility of our digital resources. So when you're giving digital content, you want it to be perceivable in multiple ways. So this would include someone who is deaf is still able to get the content presented via audio, right? So your podcast has a transcript. Someone who is colorblind is still able to choose the right button. Instead of the green button submits, the red button cancels. There's something besides color indicating that they can perceive what's going on. O stands for operable. Is your navigation, are your interactions operable? And this can include, when you're dealing with the world of Adobe, this can include any sort of interactive publications you create, any websites you create, anything like that, where someone might need to click on something. Do you have understandable content for you? And robust. Is your digital content robust enough to work with current technology, including assistive tech? And I'm excited that we have such a push in our world for things to be responsive, right? We want everything to work on our phones and our tablets and our massive office monitors. So that helps with robustness because it helps make sure that designers think about various kinds of technology when they are building their resources. So whenever you are faced with the world of Adobe, and I love the templates that are built into so many of the Adobe tools. We use Express a lot in my office, and there's so many templates, so many palettes, so many presets that you can choose from. And it always helps to make smart choices. Choose or create, if you're someone who does that, accessible templates from the outset. Look for ones that have good color contrast. Look for ones that are legible, even when they're very small. Look for ones that are even tagged as accessible or flagged for accessibility. In some cases, when you're dealing with any fanciness, right? Any fancy tool, there will be features and components that may not be able to be accessible. And we'll talk about a few of those, but if you can, avoid that. A lot of times there is a way to give a comparable experience, a comparable, flashy, shiny experience without choosing something that's inaccessible. Never give your content in just a visual way. Always have a text equivalent. Caption all your media, transcribe all your audio, and if you are contracting with someone to make some gorgeousness in Adobe for you, or if you're buying a product, a plugin, an add-on, or selecting a free one, choose one that meets accessibility requirements. So here are some best practices across different Adobe tools, and we'll talk about these in greater detail. Color contrast is one that is really important, and I think it's becoming more prominent. I think that, Adobe Color allows you to do some basic contrast checking. There are also some built-in contrast checkers depending on which tools you're using. And there are third-party tools. I'll share a couple later on that help us design for people who are colorblind and help us ensure readability. Typography is always important. If you are designing something from scratch, choose legible fonts, preferably sans serif. I know some of us love our serif fonts, but in the world of accessibility, a serif font can be more visually cluttered for some users and can present issues for someone who's low vision. Maintain adequate font size. Teensy fonts, not the best, and proper line spacing is often important. Alt text I'm going to touch on, but we'll look at some examples in a moment. When you're dealing with alt text, it's really important for it to be meaningful. It needs to convey the content and the function of the image. In most of the Adobe tools at this point, there is a way to add alt text. yes, definitely in Express, definitely in Acrobat, definitely, almost always definitely in InDesign. Um, a lot of them have a capability to include alt text. If there isn't a way to add alt text, then give whatever information is from the image in the context around it. Okay, so if you're generating an EPUB of some sort and you know that there's not going to be a way to put in alt text, give the image information around your image. If you're dealing with decorative images, mark that appropriately. And some of the tools allow that and some don't. One challenge with decorative images is how do you decide what's decorative? And I'm looking at the roster of people who are here today, and I know some of you guys make absolutely gorgeous visual content. And you choose the pictures and the aspects of the visual design for a reason, right? Um, when you do that, you have to consider whether or not there is content and function you need to indicate to the user. Is it truly decorative, like it's a divider line that really doesn't do much of anything? Or is it maybe it's a beautiful photo of our campus and you need to give some content and function for that? When you're dealing with language use, keep your text simple and direct. This helps a lot of us. One of the biggest challenges, and this is frankly true in Express and in um, other interactive tools within the world of Adobe, make sure all of your interactive elements are accessible via keyboard. So when you are ready to share that, or even when you're just starting to build it, do some research about which components work with keyboard access and which don't. When I talk about keyboard access, I'm referring to accessing everything on the application, the publication, the website, using just the keyboard. So can you tab through it? Can you use the arrows to navigate? Can you always tell where you are, right? Are there visible focus indicators? And another important aspect of this is avoiding keyboard traps, right? So you don't want a user to end up trapped in a pop-up of some sort and not be able to get back to the main content. One question I get asked a lot is what to do with screen readers and screen reader compatibility. Essentially, for screen readers, if you use good semantic structure, you use headings, lists, form field labels, you indicate the language of a document or a page, you give it a descriptive title, you give your links names that make sense instead of click here or read more. If you do those things, your publications or websites or whatever will work for someone who's using a screen reader in most cases. I don't advise folks just deciding to test with screen readers because it's an art to using a screen reader. It's not one that I am particularly skilled at. I can test a few things, but we do have a couple available on campus. We have, if you use a Mac, you have VoiceOver. If you are using a PC, you can download NVDA for free. And we just got a campus-wide license for JAWS and Zoom Text, which combine together in a tool called Fusion. And you can learn about that on OIT's website on the software page. So I've mentioned color contrast a couple of times, and I'm giving you here on this page some examples of what passes and what fails different color contrast. Excuse me, what passes and what fails the requirements when it comes to certain color contrast. So if you look in the top left, you'll see white text on a red background, and you'll see that regular regular size text fails, but large passes, right? So color contrast isn't as clear cut as, oh, don't use this color or don't use that color. It depends on how you use it, what size it is. And some of these examples sort of surprised me. The bottom left, I can see quite well. And I thought that the white text on the blue background would pass. It does not. Okay. So when you are evaluating color and your use of it, make sure you evaluate your color contrast. There are several tools. One is called the Color Contrast Analyzer. I'm about to put the link to it in our chat. So this tool is different from many others because it allows you to test without publishing something online, right? It allows you to test on your own machine and not have to publish it online before you do so. Now, I have not found a successful screen reader, a successful contrast analyzer that lets you just upload an image with some text on it, and it'll magically tell you where the contrast is successful and where it isn't. Have not found that. When you're evaluating your use of text over an image background, test the point where the contrast is the worst. Okay. So you can see, I hope you're able to check out these. These are some Adobe Express things I generated today. Actually, the example on the left is the template that came out of Express. And what happens here is that there's white text on the yellow background. There is some teensy tiny white text on a pink background. And on the right side, I've made the text dark. I've made the text on yellow dark. I've made the text on pink bolder and thicker. That's not much of a change, but that tiny little shift makes it so this content is more readily available to more people. Now I'm going to talk about alt text, and I hope I'm not going to call out anybody here. I doubt I will, but we have on the page here is an example of alt text, and this was a local website that had a carousel, and they, for whatever reason, were not able to put alt text on each image of the carousel. So they just had every image in the carousel had this list of alt texts. Alt texts, it's hard to say. You can see, oh, a very merry giveaway. That's great. A person being greeted for a job interview, mom helping child ride bike, and then the rest of them just say promotional banner. So when you're dealing with alt text, convey what's there, convey the content and function, and say it's decorative if you need to. I'm giving you now another example of alt text, and it is, excuse me, let me go back. All right, so this is an example of overkill when it comes to alt text. This is a logo. It says SPLC, and it has a little black dot. And then to the right, there's a button that says donate. The alt text for this The Southern Poverty Law Center's monogram logo sits at the top left of the screen. It is composed of the letters SPLC displayed in a bold black serif font. That's a lot, right? What could have worked would be Southern Poverty Law Center. That would be just fine for the alt text there, right? Or Southern Poverty Law Center SPLC, if you're going to use SPLC to refer to it a bunch of other places. But when you're giving alt text, you don't have to describe in great detail a basic image. Now, when you're dealing with a complicated image, you can choose to give alt text that covers the basics and then have a long description in the context of the page. All right, I promise I'm going to talk about Adobe tools in particular. So I'm going to move quickly through this. I will point out descriptive link text. This is an important one. Please don't use generic link text like click here or read more. If I'm taking your link out of context, I should be able to figure out something about where it goes. All right. Another very important aspect of link text is to make sure your link is indicated with something besides a color change. This is a challenge. In Express, you can muck about with how your links appear. And what you want is when someone tabs to your link or when someone mouses over your link, you want there to be a change that is beyond color. Okay, so yes, it can change color. That's great. That's wonderful. But you want another indicator as well. Maybe an underline, maybe a border. Some people make it bold, something beyond color. All right. So I'm going to talk now about Adobe things. And Barrett, what time are we done?
Yeah, sure. So I advertise this as a 30-minute session. If you need to go over, you're welcome to. The next session is
Okay.
not for another 30 minutes, and people
Okay.
can hop off if they want to, or you can keep going.
All right. Excellent. Okay. So if you need to abandon this, I understand. I'm going to keep talking for a few more minutes. Adobe Express, fabulous tool, does great things. You can add alt text to your images in Express if you choose the gear on the image, all right? You can add captions. It'll put up a caption field when you add an image. Note that if you do something like what's it called? The glide show, right? Where you have things zooming in and out. Some of those do not, some of those do not carry alt text, right? So only use that for something decorative. Also recognize that AI generated stuff may have AI generated alt text that may not mean a darn thing. Other things to do in Adobe Express, make sure your keyboard navigation works. If you're downloading a template of a web page, someone who built that may have changed how things are set up so that there is not a visible focus indicator. Also use clear fonts, simple layouts, and when you are building your content, use the heading levels that are there. It has a heading 1, heading 2, paragraph, and some list tools. Those are great. One thing to note is that Adobe Express does not export a tagged PDF, in my experience. So if you are making something in Express and you need to generate that as a PDF, take it to Acrobat Pro and tag your PDF there. When you're dealing with Photoshop, Photoshop lets you obviously adjust your levels, your color balance in order to fix your contrast. You can add alt text in your file info description area. And the color contrast analyzer I shared with you lets you type in a hex code if you want. It also has an eyedropper, but you can grab your hex codes in Photoshop so you can test those as well. If you're dealing with Illustrator, recognize that color contrast is a huge thing, and test, right? You can use proof setup in your Illustrator process to simulate what color blindness does to an image. So you can make sure that your illustrations, your things you're building, are coming across the way you want to. Illustrator's another tool that has limited support for screen readers. That means it has limited ability to put in tags. So that's something, again, if you need it to be a PDF, you need to take it to Acrobat and build it there. Take your Illustrator file, make as accessible as you want to, as you can, addressing all your color contrast needs, and then take it to Acrobat to put in your tags. InDesign. InDesign is some fancy goodness, and you can do great things with it. One thing that you can do for accessibility is you can add your alt text when you're exporting an object. You can use your file info to add metadata. If you're building an EPUB, if you're building something that has lots of interactive components, consider using ARIA. ARIA is sort of it's like an accessibility labeling system that tells different assistive technologies what to do with certain things. Also, when you're exporting from InDesign, you would make sure to choose interactive PDF in order to maintain those accessibility things that you've built. One thing that's interesting about Acrobat, about the Adobe tools in general, is how you export them, how you generate the file has a lot to do with what accessibility stuff maintains. I'm going to keep going through this. Adobe XD allows for ARIA landmarks. It allows, you can test for keyboard navigation. You can test for voice commands if you want to. There are accessible templates for this, and they are often indicated pretty clearly because they will have labeled components within them. There are plugins that you can use to test contrast and color blindness, and as always, pick readable fonts. Adobe Premiere is a fabulous application that does really amazing things. Make sure that you caption your video and transcribe your audio. If you are conveying something only through visuals, make sure you have an audio description of that. Think about when you're working in Premiere, you have a couple of options regarding your captions. So you can produce your captions and export them as a sidecar, right? A little tag along file that goes with your video file, or you can burn them into your video. Now, there are a couple of reasons you'd want to do either of those things. Closed captions are the ones with the CC, and you can turn them on and off depending on what you need. Almost all video players allow for you to turn on and off captions now. However, if you're posting videos on certain social media applications, some of them don't, certain social media platforms don't allow you to control captioning. They basically expect it to be burned in, or they assume you won't have any. If you are generating video or audio on behalf of UA and publishing it, my office has funds that can pay for your captioning or transcription. So reach out to me and we can make that happen. Okay, Acrobat. Acrobat accessibility, bless its heart, right? Acrobat is, of course, how you make PDFs accessible. Start with an accessible source file, as accessible as you can get it, whether it's coming out of Microsoft Office or it's coming out of one of these other Adobe tools. When you get into Acrobat Pro, can't do this in just the reader, run the accessibility checker. It will identify missing alt text. It will help you fix your heading structure. It will help you tag your content. It will help you mark your images as decorative when you need to. Couple of things though, make sure that you don't auto tag your document in Acrobat unless you really want to wipe out all of the tags that are already there. So other things that happen in Acrobat, there's a reading order tool that lets you view, it has little numbers on each component, lets you view the order in which a screen reader will read that content. The reason that's important is a lot of times when you have something you've brought in from Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever else, the reading order ends up being the order in which you put layers in or the order in which you moved things around. It doesn't necessarily match up with reality. So go to Acrobat and test your reading order. Not a very difficult thing to do, but it can be tedious. And I strongly advise that you save often and recognize that when you delete a set of tags in Acrobat, there's not an undo. So save often and recognize that sometimes it may not have versioning available. Okay, that was fast. That was a lot. I am presenting a lot of accessibility workshops over the next couple of months. I'm happy to come to you and help you with any of this as you need. Thank you for being here. Accessibility is all of our jobs.